Okay, so welcome to our June Psychosomatic Conversations. This is the third part of our series, and the first two we're taking a look at the importance of somatics and psychosomatics. And this session is specifically looking at your questions, and we're going to endeavor to answer your questions that you may have relating to anything around the body. We put out already a couple of questions, and we've had 5 questions in, which we're going to start to work with. But I'm sure that there'll be other questions that the people here may also like to be asking. So please put those into your chat. The questions that we're going to answer, we will be taking a psychosomatic flavor. And yes, so welcome and thank you for coming today. We really appreciate your support in showing up and also in, growing the community and really taking a look at all things psychosomatics. So before we start going into the questions, Christy, do you have anything that you would like to say before we start today's session?
Well, welcome everyone. This is always fun to have questions come in because we get to be more specific, especially for our community as it continues to grow, to have your personal questions come in so we can answer them on a level that is more personal for you. And that's always very fun instead of being general. So we appreciate the people that are sending the questions in, and hopefully we continue to get more because it gives us more content around what you're interested in. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Sure.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, relative to wherever you are in the world. I like this part because it's so interactive. We get to have a look at our unique human states and also understanding how our bodies speak to us individually, but also how our bodies are so similar to each other. We get to understand the human psyche and how we exist in this human form.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Christy. Okay, so the first question that we've got has come in from Gail, and Gail, you're here, so that is great. You've mentioned that you're wondering about a cough or phlegm with nasal congestion. Um, your allergy tests have come up as not being positive, and you've had this for several years. So to take a look at this one, it can be totally frustrating when you've got this ongoing cough and bringing up phlegm. And no doubt you've tried several different ways of clearing this issue. But what we suggest psychosomatically is to take a look at number one, inflammation and things that could be causing inflammation within your systems. With the inflammation, you're looking at heat on the subject, and sometimes the body's trying to move the heat around your body so it encapsulates it and moves it through phlegm. And some of these things don't have to be just emotional, they can be in the environment. So you're looking at things sometimes that people may not necessarily consider first up, but also, things like mold in the environment, because you've already tried a number of different things. Potentially, fungal infections in the body. And I know that you've possibly done the basic by looking at the bloods and how things are, but realistically, that would be probably a good place to start. From a psychosomatic emotional perspective, when we're looking at phlegm and we're looking at the lungs, you're looking at some of the deep emotions of maybe holding on to um, some of the emotions, not allowing them to move through. So there would be an invitation possibly to also reflect on whether there's something in your world that is creating some conflict about moving forward. Christy, Sean, would you like to add to that? And Gail,
Yeah,
if you
go
wanted
ahead.
to add anything in the chat, you feel free. You may not want to come online, but feel free to add any comments as we're speaking. into the chat as well. Christy.
Sean, I'm going to have you go ahead while I let this
Sure.
next person.
Yeah. So the breath is very sacred, Gail. The lungs are very much the emotional space. And for somebody who has experienced lung embolisms, the reclaiming of the space of the lungs is very much about how much room in your life is there for you. Yeah, it's about space. It's about identifying space. And when we come in contact, when the body's creating a phlegm, there's inflammation or what's called an itis, yeah, where there's a part of ourselves that's experiencing an irritation, and that congestion is lying in the lungs. And any congestion in the lungs is very much our emotional disposition. So if there are parts of you that feel unheard, unseen, untouched, unexperienced, then you can be creating a space where you feel it's inappropriate to be able to let that part of yourself surface or come out. And yet your body feels a particular way, right? It feels congested, it's feeling heavy. So there is an emotional part of you that's also under duress. So most certainly, please find a practitioner that can emotionally assist you in finally releasing how you feel about your place in life. It's not necessarily about how we feel about everybody else. It's about how we're individually experiencing life.
Yeah.
So please find somebody emotionally that can assist you through that process. Because 12 months is a long time.
Several years, even longer.
Oh, yeah, right. So that's a long time for something to be secretive about.
The diet is really important as well when you're looking at this type of challenge.
Mm.
So if you take a look at what foods that you might be eating, given that you've got an underlying challenge there as well, the foods themselves can create more inflammation. So sometimes
Mm.
people will also recommend to speak with a nutritionalist and do like an anti-inflammatory diet, which is always going to help. Christy, sorry, over to you.
Yeah, for sure. The dairy, cheese, all the things that create phlegm, period, let alone if you already have some. So Gail, you said that there was also some congestion in the sinus. Sean talked about grief. That leads me to a holding of grief over time and not being able to express that grief. And when I say grief, I also add in the plethora of emotions that come with grief and the buildup in the body that's created in the heart, moving up through the throat, and the sinuses when there's a lot of nasal and sinus congestion in somatic work is often tied to repressed or held sadness, grief. And we're right in throat chakra as well, which is expression of blank. And so, yes, diving into the emotional aspects of what might be held and having the practitioner to be able to guide that process, because your body will know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a matter, in my work, let me just speak for me, it's a matter of getting the right questions asked so your system can answer them, because I do believe your system knows that, and creating the container around that to be
Yeah.
heard
And learning how to
expressed.
learning how to emotionally listen
Yeah.
and allow through what is not logical, but yet present. And I see you put in the chat there that it started after a stomach surgery. So the stomach surgery in itself will already be a catalyst for what else lies behind.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. So moving on to question number 2, Gail, I hope we've answered that and given you some level of some things to look at moving forward.
Yeah, please reach out if need be, Gail.
Yep. The next question is, the bottom of my feet are so tired along with my calves. I'm okay when I get up in the morning, but by 3 o'clock, it is all downhill. I'm so tired, I fall asleep at 8 p.m. I do a lot of walking some days, but even on my days off, I am beat. And yes, I am under stress, so I'm sure that that's a huge issue. We've got a second question also about feet and plantar fascia. So these two, we're going to answer these ones together. Sean, do you want to try this one first, please?
Yeah, sure. So in psychosomatics, the feet interlace and interconnect with the entire body form. Also, we can have a look at reflexology, where they have mapped all of the body systems in the feet. And so the feet are our connection, our traction of how the body connects to being in this present place, being here on this earth at this time in this form. And there's a sensation that the feet will give back to the body whilst the body is also giving out a sensation. The clarity of that sensation is also brings about the condition of the feet and therefore the legs. So I put to you that when the feet are uncomfortable and under duress, then there are most certainly going to be environmental circumstances that may feel very challenging to be able to stand in or to move forward through. The tiredness is also part of the lethargy of attending to circumstances. So when we take that little bit further with the plantar fasciitis, the plantar fasciitis is an inflammation of the plantar, which is a muscle that runs underneath in the center of the foot. And that in itself pulls in excessively tight and goes to bend the foot. So the foot is almost wanting to lift away from the ground rather than actually press into the ground. So there's a flight experience, but there's also an agitation that's going on with that flight because of the inflammation that's happening there. So we need to be able to reconnect with the feet. And when we reconnect with the feet, or we actually are able to become more mobile with the feet, that's when we're moving back into life. Yes, reconnecting to earth itself, being able to conduct ourselves accordingly. So the feet are certainly telling us a lot around yourself environmentally. And how comfortable or uncomfortable your current circumstances are, and how you feel about those circumstances, and the impacts or impressions of those places and spaces. Christy?
And I would add to that, that contraction in the bottom of the foot has probably happened over a period of time. And so the chances of it becoming more painful in midday gets higher because the contraction is pretty consistent, is my guess. And then also I would say the pain in the legs, we're looking at base chakra somatically. So it's feeling supported, feeling grounded. And that's the question I would ask you is where are you not feeling supported? And to have a conversation about that. And also it brings in a heaviness in that lower leg with the contraction and also the pain. And so your capacity to stand on your legs for a longer period of time will continue to go down if that part isn't addressed, even if it's getting that worked on to create some more management in your life versus trying to outthink it. The body itself, to have the feet worked on and the legs worked on physically will really help take out some of the contraction. Because if there are circumstances that can't change right now for you, what I would love for you to look at it is, okay, what can I do to manage it in a different way until I can feel more supported or until I have a different resource, and literally move the legs. Even I have quite a few clients use those vibrating boards where you put your legs on at nighttime, and it stimulates because it's shaking and it brings circulation all the way up the body. That is a really good one. Or I would even tell you to start rubbing your feet and your legs at nighttime, or get a massager and have it. I would rather get a massager instead of me doing it myself, just so you can rest and put your feet and legs on something that creates movement in the flesh, especially if you have a job where you're sitting all day. So there's a lot of variables we're not sure of around that. But if you're sitting all day, you did say you walked, so maybe get some work on the legs and feet to soften that up, especially the plantar fasciitis.
And also just to notice when you're walking, how you're walking as well. Whether like when you're starting to walk, if it's actually painful right from the start and you're pushing yourself to walk, to notice when there's less pain in your feet. And I love the self-care process that Christy suggested, because sometimes it's the self-care that, you're caring for everybody else, but may not have time to actually do that self-care practice. And it's really important when you've got this type of pain to not just consider the emotional component, which of course is extremely important, but to work also on the physical as well, and maybe some of the attitudes around responsibilities, and seeing if there can be a holistic way that you can, take a look at your whole situation. So I know you're not here at the moment, so hopefully that has maybe answered also some of the questions that you've got to consider. And again, please reach out if you would like to reach out to Christy, Sean, or myself.
If I could, Linda, I just want to extend in on that. Michelle has put a few different things in the chat there.
Oh, yes, I see that.
Also with regards to feet. So there's repeatedly bruising toes, as well as arms and legs, which is extremities. And bruising those is banging them. Yeah, there's a banging to the point where the blood vessels are maybe quite fine and therefore they're breaking, and that's when you get the bruising that comes up. But it's the banging that you need to notice, because you're unintentionally pushing hard up against things. And that in itself requires a lot more self-awareness. So that push is less. Yeah, there needs to be a bit more grace around that so that bruising doesn't take place. But understand, if the bruising is happening on your body and quite frequently, therefore there might need to be some strengthening of the blood vessels as well. And blood within psychosomatics is very much about joy. It's very much about happiness. It's very much about vibrancy. And when that vibrancy may drop below a particular level, that's when we're also going to create that bruising as well, because that joy is coming to the surface, but it's also coming to the surface through duress. There's one other point there, which is about pins and needles. And pins and needles are very much about the nervous system, specifically about the nervous system. There is a syndrome called Raynaud's, which is also about circulation on extremities. And Raynaud's is very much emotionally charged experiences and being able to fully process an emotion. And yet, if we're getting pins and needles, we're pulling away from the extremities. We're pulling away from connecting with what's outside of us, or we're concerned about how outside of us would interpret how we're feeling or what we're expressing or what we're putting out there. So it's about those boundaries, about the connection between who I am and how the world perceives me and receives me. So the nervous system is most certainly a place that requires stillness in order to create peace. So pins and needles are showing you a lot about the compression around the nervous system. So consider for yourself, once again, the space around the nervous system, but space for the nervous system is also calm. It means it's the mind is no longer relating to something or anything, but it's actually relating to yourself. Yeah, therefore you become the place in space rather than everything else that is the place in space.
Yeah. Michelle, can you type in as well what what you're actually doing in terms of treatments for yourself? Like, are you also working with having body treatments? Because I'm noticing as well that you've got frozen, stiff, painful shoulder, along with the pins and the needles. So often when there's areas of tension around the neck and the shoulders, that can also lead to the pins and needles in the hands. And there's so many different things that are related to what you're saying.
Physical alignment, yeah.
Yeah, and the actual physical. And sometimes that can be, again, with some of the emotions and the responsibilities and the compression that can create from a psychosomatic perspective. It can create a holding pattern and that huge amount of tension. So whenever we see a frozen or stiff, painful shoulder, we're usually looking at emotions of the heart that are struggling to have an expression through the throat chakra. So things that you might find that you just need to suck it up, get on with it, and that you may not have had the opportunity or the time or the safety to really take your time to gently explore some of those deeper underlying emotions that may have been pushed down for some time.
Yeah. And there's a conversation of crossover with regards to immune system.
Okay. So Michelle's just said none, just supplements.
Yeah.
Just supplements for health, nervous system, stretching, meditation, heart
Yeah.
connection, loss of voice. Okay, rings true. Okay.
Got it.
Yeah. And when you hold a lot of space, and Michelle, I know that you do this, you hold space for a lot of people. So sometimes it can be a feeling of who's there to hold the space for me, and recognizing that there may be people to hold space, but you're used to not asking for help. So I would maybe take a look at that as well and see what avenues that can be explored.
Yeah. Receiving help can often feel as if we're handing over our power, but actually it's just bringing more power to the table in order to restore.
Yeah, because it is a learned behavior from childhood, usually, sometimes related to neglect, and having the experience that needs aren't met, and then the adaptation to meet your own needs becomes quite normal. And to ask for a need, that's kind of what I'm hearing Linda say too. That can be really challenging depending on your life experience when you're much younger, because these kind of things develop over time, and patterns that aren't addressed or seen over time, and then they become physical ailments. So we kind of have to retrack and go back to see when it started and what was happening. How long has it been going on? So there are a lot of questions that are added into what we're saying to get more information, to have it be more specific to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when it shows up in the autoimmune, the autoimmune is a self-disassembling situation. Yeah, it's where we feel like we're breaking ourselves down rather than building ourselves up. But we need to know, what is that self? How do I know who I am and what I'm protecting? And the immune system will protect us when we know what us is. And the more magnetized you become to who you are, and the more admiration you have for who you are, then the immune system also becomes online with how you currently see yourself.
Mm.
Yeah, the immune system can only protect what is currently believed as who I am. And sometimes we can feel very diminished inside of who we are, and we need to rebuild that. We need to be on our own side in order for the systems to understand how to operate online properly.
Yeah.
Beautiful explanation, Sean.
Thank you, Kristen.
It
And
reminds
sorry.
autoimmune reminds me of dripping water. It drips and it drips and it drips over time again. And that building up of self is such a beautiful analogy to repair what has been in disrepair probably for quite some time. It's a very good example.
And the things that Michelle, that you have written down, I'd like to just address a couple of other points because they are relevant to the whole group and anyone listening. And because your symptoms are appearing as a collective, it means that there are also more things to consider. So individually as well as collectively. You've mentioned eyesight changes, blurred vision. I would personally, I've also had some personal experience with this, but I would personally experience or suggest that if you're noticing blurred vision, that you do actually get it checked out through an ophthalmologist, go to the GP and get a referral, because there can be some things that are changing within the visual sight field. And with the field of vision, it can change really, really quickly. So without creating an alarm, it's not something to sort of sit back and watch. It's something to be proactive on. And that can also lead into other symptoms as well, like particularly around pressure, um, eye conditions like glaucoma. There's a number of different things that can relate that through the eyes, and they also relate, when you're looking at the eyes, they also relate to some of the neural conditions as well. So it doesn't have to be extreme, it doesn't have to be bad, but it's something that you need to be aware of as a possibility, and even just to rule out that possibility. Fatigue often goes with that too. So with fatigue, and particularly when you're feeling fatigue, and we also had that as well. We've answered the questions from Pam already. I noticed, Pam, you've arrived here, but you've also mentioned fatigue as well. Some people like to they would prefer complementary medicines or alternative medicines, but sometimes actually getting blood checks can be really helpful to actually understand what systems of your body may need extra support, and to have an informed decision as to what is currently showing out of balance, so you actually know some of the corrective things that you can work with, aligned to some of the alternate therapies that you might like. So my suggestion would be to take a look at that. Christy, do you want to address hair loss?
Yeah. Are all of these things happening at the same time? Just questions all the way through. It's part of the autoimmune. I'm just looking here. That's a lot. Hair loss, if all of these are happening at the same time, my suggestion first too would also be to just make sure and get your blood checked and get a healthcare professional looking at your blood work just to make sure nothing is off. Somatically with hair loss can be related to, we're looking at the head on the crown chakra, and can be related to a tendency to have high anxiety and a lot of thinking and rumination and I would say even looping in the head over a period of time again. But it sounds like there's a lot more going on, which is why I say that in its own little container. And then if that's happening, to definitely get all that checked, because it's not a little, that's quite a bit that seems to be happening at the same time. I do want to share a story about hair loss that's, this woman didn't have all of those symptoms, but she did. She was starting to lose a lot of hair, and she came to one of the psychosomatic courses. She's a friend of mine, and it's probably been 10 years now. She came, I saw her again the other day. She had lost hair quite a bit through here and really thinned, and her hair has come back quite amazing. After the first couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks after the psychosomatic course, she had a beautiful emotional release a few times and understood that her anxiety and trying to figure out, I would say, how to stay safe and how to figure out many things. She settled down in that, and she started having a lot of new hair growth coming all through the hairline and on the top. It was quite remarkable to see it firsthand, and I know her personally, and she has a full head of hair today, which is very promising. She definitely had all of her blood work checked as well. Everything was okay except that, and the shift in the emotional release over time. Her hair did come back fully, which was pretty amazing.
Sean, from a previous hairdressing life?
Very much an extension of the nervous system. And I've seen so many different versions of hair loss in all sorts of ways, whether the hair becomes brittle, whether there's bald patches that take place, whether there's thinning that occurs, in various ways in which it takes place. And more often than not, the nervous system is probably having a conversation about something else other than itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, they've also got a number of different shampoos to help with hair loss these days.
Skin conditions and
There's some
different
medicated,
experiences.
there's some medicated treatments that can go onto the hair as well.
Yeah.
And part of what they actually say with that is like they get you to massage the scalp. And if you think about the massage
Circulation.
the scalp, yes, you're adding circulation, but you're also doing a self-care of self-soothing the nervous system.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And that the whole conversation around the nervous system is also noticing your internal atmosphere. The internal atmosphere and your comfortability with being with yourself. Yeah. Are you able to address yourself in such ways that you, one, feel safe, two, feel seen, And 3, feel acknowledged. And that's before you even get out of bed. Yeah, the moment that we interact with the world is the moment that we start becoming stimulated. And overstimulation for the nervous system is when things become fractured.
Yeah.
So rather than notice that we feel fractured, we need to come back to a point of sovereignty or solidarity. We need to be able to console ourselves or consolidate the self and bring that point of center to one of admiration. Your body is your life, it's your space. Then there is life. So step by step, people, step by step.
Again, coming back to as well the importance of blood tests. Sometimes if you're mineral deficient in certain things, and if you've got potentially thyroid, I'm not suggesting this at all for you, Michelle, but for others listening to this, if you've got thyroid conditions, some of the symptoms of that will be hair loss. So that will show up in the bloods. And a lot of those things can be corrective as well. So again, by understanding what's out of balance, you can work to create more balance and harmony. And when you look at certain conditions where the hair drops out completely, alopecia, you're looking and chemotherapy, you're looking at toxic shock. So we've also got emotional shock. So there can be various degrees of shock and types of shock. So again, as Sean has mentioned about the nervous system, it's all affecting the nervous system. It's all related, and it's a whole body response, not just a body part.
And
Okay.
I think it's important to understand too, in our conversations, all of them really, that the balance of that wheel of medical intervention is a must. The balance of psychological support is so important. And looking at your resources and looking at your movement and your diet, to remember that there isn't something wrong with you. When we're talking about somatics and the emotional components tied to it, please know there's a whole wheel of other things that are included. And usually when something gets to the complexity that you are losing hair or the autoimmune is here, you're going to need more spokes in that wheel addressed than just one component, because we are complex human beings. And Sean, I really appreciate and love what you said about our job is us when we wake up, first and foremost. What is it that I might need? How am I feeling? To really do a check-in versus check out the second the eyes go open. Because what happens when we check out the second we wake up is the nervous system's activated that fast, and it jumps right back in the loop. And then we're taking meds to go to sleep. We're taking caffeine to wake up. And it creates this wicked, wicked spiral. Eventually, the wheels come off somewhere because we're not made to do that our whole lives. So there's never just one reason. Usually there's many reasons for that, something to not be functioning like we want it to. Difficult to look at sometimes though, but please remember it's many things.
Okay. And so often there's a development or regrowth that takes place. There could be a certain aspect of ourselves that's having what I call an upgrade, where it's improving on its current perception. There's a development that's happening. We're organic beings, and we're here to evolve. And so that evolution is also about upgrading and growing into or growing through.
which can be challenging sometimes.
Expert.
Can be. Usually is.
Yes, there's some very unique experiences that life asks us to digest and process, and we need to be available for that process to occur. We need those cycles to come through. We need to allow those cycles to take place in order for us to reestablish our point of view, reestablish our experience, reestablish how we relate to ourselves, because I'm not who I was 10 years ago. And if I relate to myself only as who I was 10 years ago, then I'm missing out on everything I've grown in the last 10 years. So it's, there's a continuous collective improvement on who I am and where I am. And therefore my version of myself also needs to be continuously upgraded.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. Christy, our next question is for you. I am experiencing restless leg syndrome. Can you help me with this?
I've seen this so many times in my practice. I actually had restless legs when I was pregnant because sometimes the pressure of the baby can cause pressure on my nerves in my legs, which happened with both babies. Not pleasant. And I'm really grateful it went away, but some people have it for years. And physiologically, sometimes it can start as simple as an iron deficiency, which in pregnancy, that happens a lot. There can be neurological conditions that happen. If those are checked out, there again, please check out with your physician what could be. And if nothing is there, then I would walk into the psychosomatic pieces. The clients that I've seen through the years that have restless leg syndrome, the tendency emotionally is to feel stuck, like they can't get out. And their brain says, oh my God, I have got to get out of here. I can't do this anymore. So the brain's telling the body, let's go, but they know they can't leave, whatever that situation is. There's kind of a tug of war between loyalty to whatever they feel like they have to stay in and wanting to leave, but feeling like they can't. And that tug of war happens in over a long period of time. What I've seen pattern wise is the feeling of stuckness, the feeling of the pattern of people pleasing, wanting to take care of others and not taking care of self, because we're looking in the lower part of the body, which is base chakra. How are you supporting yourself? Is there something that you feel like you want to get out of? You might not be able to. Could you create a plan to move out of it? Because more often than not that I've seen, hands down, is I will hear, well, I can't do that, but I want to. Hence the tug of war. And I would invite you to go, maybe there might be another solution or a different resource or a way to manage it. It doesn't have to be this or that. It can be this and that. And even to have a support, to have someone work on your legs if you can't move out of a situation. Most often it's a relationship that I've seen, a relationship that is very challenging that the person can't move out from. Oftentimes is linked to childhood experiences of not feeling or being able to set boundaries or say what they need to stop a behavior or to move out of a situation. It isn't a simple solution in restless legs. It has many components again. So taking one thread at a time, to me, is the best advice. Nutrition and movement being the first thread, and then moving into seeing what are the pieces that we could resource you with that you feel like would be a possibility to come out of that. How I see it when I'm working, it's almost like quicksand. It sucks you in and you can't move your legs when you're in a lot of that heavy sand, and yet you want to move. And the body is hardwired to get out of something, and yet physically it can't. So it's a very strange conundrum when that is present. So there's finding someone, I would say, that does some good body work, if nothing else is wrong, to support you in the process of moving some of that energy out of the legs, because it's literally stuck energy. And the person needs to move a lot. They tend to be doers. They're moving a lot and taking care of. So coming back to what Sean said in the beginning, what is the self needing taken care of? How could the self move in a different way versus other people?
And also the experience of I guess the emotional process of what it's like to feel trapped.
Hmm.
And and logically we would prefer to refrain from feeling that. And then that's when we end up with a side effect or a symptom, rather than actually, what does it feel like to be trapped? And when that's an inward understanding or comprehension of what it is to be trapped. And there'll be other links to that historically for us. And that can also give us the capacity to create change as well, because we're no longer avoiding the entrapment, we're understanding the entrapment, and then we realize what's essential for us as individuals.
Yeah.
And we make choices accordingly.
Even just opening up choice,
Yeah.
providing a second pathway can change that level of stuckness.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Nice responses. So we have one more question, and the question that we have is one that I'm going to look at. My hips are tight when I walk. It is causing me pain. What can I do? So not such a easy question without asking a few more questions and actually seeing how this person is presenting in terms of their posture. So the first thing would be for you to actually get somebody to take some photos of you and your posture, to take a look at how you're currently walking and what your hips are doing when you're walking. Because this could be something like a weakness in the glutes. It could be that you could have some arthritis in one of the hips, but it could be something more simple that you're actually clenched. And so one of the things that you would start off doing is firstly, just stand up, stand in your normal position, take a look at your weight distribution on your feet, and to notice if there is any pain in your hips in standing and what the buttocks is doing. Is the buttocks clenched? Is there a fear response that's causing a constriction? And therefore, similar to what Christy was saying with the restless leg, was quite a lot of that also applied to the hips. You know, how safe does the person feel? Is there a conflict in the emotional experience that they're having? Because all of that will affect the hips. And what we're trying to do is create some opening of space. So the first thing is to take a look at what is actually creating the pain in the physical form. And you need to understand that obviously the posture relates to psychosomatics and the emotional component, but we're not just looking at one, we're looking at both. So yes, we understand that the emotions affect the posture, but to actually correct it, working on the emotional field, particularly when you're looking at hips, may not be sufficient. So you actually need to be working on both sides, the emotional component as well as the physical. And that's one of the reasons why we see people interested in the psychosomatic work being physiotherapists as well as psychologists, because the meeting ground is in the psychosomatics, which is part of what this series has been about, the mind and the body, and working with all aspects and not just taking a look at a part and saying, well, what emotionally can I change? It's actually taking a look at the emotions, physicality, and matching that up with as much information, and notice information in formation in your form. So allowing that to speak as well. And this is, of course,
Nice, thank you, Linda.
I was just about to say, this is also Christine's favorite topic, so please do.
It's such a profound part of the body. Go, Christy.
Oh, good Lord, yes, it is. What I find in my practice is people that have clenched hips have no idea they're clenched. They have no idea, and or I would even say a tucked and clenched pelvis, because my job is to help them understand that it's clenched and understand that they're contributing to that, and what it feels like to have it released and relaxed so there's more movement in the back. What I will have people do, the practice, especially if they do clench and they're contracted all the time, is to relax when they're sitting in a chair and relax their tailbone on their out breath, if they can begin to notice that, and relax the rectum on the out breath. It's directly related. And it's very, very strange to do. And you won't notice it if you clench all the time until you do the practice a little bit. And I personally believe every human needs to relax their base, because our world is moving very fast, and we plug in to that matrix when we get on our phones and the news and the computers, and the body responds internally in the contraction. So paying attention to our bodies and the contraction is very helpful long term in your hips, especially because those muscles get really tired of holding and contracting.
Yeah.
And if you have pain in your low back, I'd highly recommend someone working on it to get that to loosen up, so you can feel the difference between the two. So you have something to compare it to.
Thank you, Christy. Sean.
Gosh, we could open an entire session just on this
I
part of
know.
the body, right? Because there's there's three parts to the body, right? There's the front, there's the back, and the sides. So the back is our history, the front is what's before us, and the sides is where I'm at. So we need to look at the functionality of that space. And when we're looking at the pelvis, we're looking at the very deep sensual self, but we're also, in combination with the sensual self, is the courage and the capacity to be able to take charge of the self. And then we carry this inside the bowl of the hip. And then the hips respond to how we currently relate to all of that. And whether that's enjoyable or whether it's unenjoyable. So the hips and their function is also about our generosity of delivering the deliciousness of who we are. So I encourage you to live a little, let a little. And that in itself also too, this place or space, if there's rigidity that's there, then part of us is concerned about change or movement or getting things shaken up. We want to keep things just the way they are rather than let them change. Change is necessary, and even the experience of change is something that each individual needs to be able to relate to.
Yeah.
So that way, when things do get shaken up and things do have various components to it, I'm able to relate to each of those components readily and easily, because I know that I'm able to juggle or balance, or my agility to be able to dance through it is something to really consider. Yeah, it's an openness to let things in, and it's an encouragement to share your responses naturally with that space to others.
Definitely things like dancing are really good to start to open up the hips. But I loved also the sitting on the chair, doing that exercise. Because even the process of sitting in the chair, the body is feeling supported. In the same way, when you do some of these hip opening experiences as well, lying down with zero gravity, it can be a beautiful way to explore because the body feels safe. And if there is any fear that's being held, the body's feeling supported.
And there's so many different experiences that take place in life, and we need to ensure our body and our systems and our mind, that we're able to process them, understand them, comprehend them, and meet life again.
So true, because life happens every day.
And it will. And it
Yes.
does. And I'm sorry if that terrifies some of you.
Well, I think it's easier to expect change because change is always constant. It is part of our human condition. And I like how you introduced that, Sean, of working with it instead of pushing against it.
Yeah.
Because the resistance there goes into a lot of the things that we talked about, like back pain and restless legs and clenching of the jaw and holding emotion down. When we have so much resistance, it's very challenging to have our body, our physical body, move that energy out. Very important to move with it, as because change does come.
Yeah. And why would I let something in that I perceive as threatening, when actually letting it in is to understand completely about what it is? And when I say letting it in, I'm not lying down and let something use me. I'm relating to something, and I need to relate to it from within who I am. Because then once I understand how that exists, then I understand how I need to relate to that on my own behalf, not by my mental perceptions, but by my physical experience based on what I've learned through history.
So true. So true.
Mm-hmm.
So that actually concludes our session today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being part of our community. We will be starting a new 3-part series, and we will let you know what the topic's going to be. If you have some suggestions for us and things that you would like for us to explore deeper, then please drop us an email or put it in a chat, or just communicate with us in some way that some of the topics that you would like. If it's not the next 3-part series, we might consider it for later on. So have a beautiful month. We hope to see some of you next time. And for those listening to the recording, thank you for listening. We hope that you found this beneficial.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Bye.